So, we're making a video in the forest here, and the topic of the video is going to be the future of media. And it's relevant today because so much of our experience is this kind of media experience that's really filtered through so many aspects of life. And we're going to kind of specifically focus on the spiritual dimension of media and look at the this kind of sense of media in a very essential kind of way. So in order to understand the future of media, right, it's important to look at the past, right? And so in the essential kind of aspect of media, we can look at the body itself as a form, as a medium, right? And it may seem strange that we would, start with the body, but we take it for granted. It's just a unit, it's just bones and flesh. That we get in our car, we drive to work, and we just do all these things, right? But if you talk to any kind of person involved in performance or dance, right, or acting, they know that the body is a medium, right? And essentially it's a medium for consciousness to express, and even non-verbally, right? So the body is, in some sense, a medium, a form of media for consciousness, and even consciousness itself is, in some sense, a medium. The pure consciousness, that would be the fundamental nature of reality, right? Which is in some sense beyond any kind of medium. It's what flows through all the mediums of mind, body, and spirit. But even within this kind of consciousness, there's subtle vibrations, right? That act in some sense is a medium of communication even. So for example, you have very early humans, right? They could just based on feeling, have this connection, with a mother and a child, that they could send out a kind of conscious vibrations, right? They would again be in this medium of consciousness, this very, very subtle medium, but even beyond their body language. Needless to say, any kind of vocal expression or word. So that, in some sense, is this field of a basic medium of consciousness, which could also be termed the collective consciousness, right? That kind of exists, as the sum total of thoughts and emotions in this kind of field, right? That we can, if we're sensitive, we can sense in different places, and we can interact with as well, consciously. And but kind of from this field, the body itself, right, came out, of this field of consciousness. Even in evolutionary terms, this conscious drive to expand and to increase the ability to experience, drove this kind of evolution, right, of animals to increase their nervous systems, the capacity to extend their memory over time, and to have this fully functioning dynamic body, right? And it was just a matter of increasing the realm of experience, the possibility of experience. And so along with that, you know, through millions of years of evolution, we have this kind of human experiment that just kind of grows out of this kind of very subtle kind of collective consciousness, and it's almost the sense of individual being, right? Kind of emerges, you know, very subtly. You know, some animals have some sense of their own self, in a very, very limited sense, but you know, what happened is even through body language, you know, you can say, this is mine, you know, or, you know, make some, you know, aggressive stance to protect your, you know, your family or your tribe or whatever. And so through that kind of dynamic expression of the medium of the body, the consciousness began to, you know, create these distinctions, right? And so with these kinds of distinctions and, you know, subtle classifications of again, a language of the medium through the body, right? You know, the experience of consciousness was expanded, was in some sense diversified. And then, you know, this kind of vocal sounds, of course, you know, beyond just the movement of the body, the projection of sound, you know, for thousands and thousands of years, you know, primitive beings were using these just a variation in vocal noises, right? But that's where we really start to begin this kind of representation. You know, this sound means that sound means this, in a very kind of primitive, raw kind of way. And then, you know, somehow the name, you know, at some point, this name idea gets attached to this kind of physical, you know, network, right, that exists with nature and is dependent on so many millions and billions of factors to exist, but somehow, you know, the noise comes out. Like, Bob, I'm Bob. Bob, me. And so, you know, in a very kind of primitive sense, this kind of identity was being formed. And then at some point, you know, somewhere in the desert, right? Or a jungle or somewhere, somebody picks up a stick. You know, some guy, you know, just picks up a stick and starts, you know, drawing circles in the sand. He's like, look, this sand is adaptable, right? It's fluid to our, and it changes with this movement of my hand connected to this stick. And could you imagine you know, what everybody else in the tribe would be thinking? What is this guy doing? You know, come on, we need to go hunting. We need to carry on. We can't be sitting here with, you know, painting, you know, circles and squares and, you know, letters. Not letters, but, you know, like an animal to paint a deer in the sand. I mean, it had to take, you know, thousands of years for this kind of, you know, expression to catch on, right? And so, you know, once they realized that they could, you know, take this material and kind of use a subtle impression of their consciousness. It's basically that even with that basic movement with the stick, making a circle, that a pure expression of consciousness was being formed. I mean, the circle wasn't existing anywhere, you know? Or the basic deer form wasn't existing anywhere. But the mind of this kind of primitive, making this, using the medium of sand, stick. In the same way, they, you know, discovered they could use pigments, right? It's even more fluid, this kind of idea, this kind of, you know, using pigments and water or spit or whatever kind of combination to make this fluid like material, and then they can go in caves and go on walls and paint their experience. I mean, this is, you know, the core, you know, just going out and hunting animals, right? Just making it large on this cave and having this torch, you know, this torch of light so they can see what they're doing. And and imagine the wonder, you know, the amazement. They said, wow, we just, you know, painted an animal, and it's, you know, it wasn't, for these primitives, it wasn't some work of art, right? It wasn't some cave painting. This was they were painting, they were invoking the spirits of these animals. They were painted on the wall, you know, just amazing, you know, life that they were expressing through their consciousness, through, you know, simple pigments, right? And then they, you know, start using, you know, start carving stones, right? At least from what we can understand. And looking in the past, and they make this, you know, these goddess figures. And imagine this the sense of abundance and life in this divine kind of feminine form, and, you know, exaggerate all the life-sustaining aspects. And again, imagine the power that these you know, stones, they weren't some kind of statue, you know, they would place in their apartment. No, this is a living object infused with their consciousness, you know, and it was coming from their consciousness. And then, you know, when they pass on this object, it's kind of sacred feminine figure, right? You know, that object itself would radiate their consciousness or their experience for thousands of years as it got passed on, and in some sense it was alive for them. And so as the kind of consciousness evolved, this kind of you know, using mediums is representing things beyond itself began to evolve. And then we had these, you know, basic, you know, languages, you know, phonetic languages where the sounds had an actual medium. The medium of sound was a medium, you know, in itself. And you know, the vibrations of the tones of each particular word had, you know, were deeply connected to the, you know, the consciousness and the body and the nervous system, and even the environment, to have a certain desired effect. And so we can kind of zoom ahead a little bit. We don't have to go into the whole history here, but the thing is, you know, what happened again with this kind of evolution in language, this making distinctions within consciousness, you know, became more and more, in some sense, rigid or contained. You know, there would be a clear idea. This is me. This is my name. This is, you know, my position within this kind of, you know, tribe or society or culture. This is, you know, my land, right? So-called. And with all this kind of, you know, mental representations, there was kind of getting involved. You know, it was designed as a tool for life. You know, it was designed as something to be useful. But somehow the language and the concepts started taking over, in some sense, the consciousness. And from this kind of subtle background of awareness, this kind of, you know, pure consciousness that these ideas and these representations were evolving out of, started to get identified with these very tools of representation that were designed to in some sense, aid consciousness or evolve consciousness. And somehow there was a awareness at some point in certain individuals, right, that we could call as rishis or yogis. Again, thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, who sat, who had the time and the space to sit and say, wait a minute, somehow, you know, all this language and these words, this identification, this feeling sense, this consciousness that expands beyond the limits of our perception of the world is being confined in these individual minds and bodies. And how has this happened? And, you know, perhaps they weren't able to look back that far to see how this kind of consciousness evolved into these forms. But they knew that through their experience, right, that the consciousness was not limited, essentially, by this kind of evolution of language and everything else, and the sense of identification. And so what they did is they formulated, using these same tools, the language and the sounds and the vibrations, using these same tools that kind of created this sense of self-identity, right? They use those same tools to say, no, we're not just this individual I, but this eternal consciousness is expressing through our nervous system, our self, our mind, our capacity to experience is only a fluctuation, only a small wave on this eternal ocean of consciousness. And so they had to find formulate these words, right? And so they, you know, came up with this concept of Atman, or consciousness, you know, God, right? And they didn't have that word, but the same idea, this beyond, this transcendent everything. And, you know, somehow, you know, formulated the words to you know, share that experience, to pass it on. And, you know, they had to do it in a relatively isolated kind of space, because most people were already getting caught up in all these identifications and language. And if you just, you know, walked up to them and said, hey, you're beyond, right? And they said, no, I got all this, you know, land I gotta deal with. I got all these so-called responsibilities, and I'm just trying to survive in this harsh climate, or whatever the case may be. And so, in some sense, a lot hasn't changed over many thousands of years. In some sense, a lot hasn't changed. But what has changed is this kind of, you know, the language obviously, you know, evolved, in these other forms of spoken language evolved that were non-phonetic, and just these random representations of words, and just this discriminating consciousness, just you know, this investigating the outer world through reason, science. And so, of course, you know, in the kind of Greek kind of experiment, where this, you know, this reason and logic became idolized, right? This kind of, you know, Platonic sense of perfection through thought and geometry, and, you know, gigantic towering structures made from the mind. And, you know, all these all these guys knew, Socrates and Plato, they knew that there was this kind of beyond consciousness, but they were, they placed it in a box, and they're thinking, I said, okay, well that's it, and we can't really know it, but let's just go explore nature, let's just get to the bottom of these atoms, how the cosmos works. And we're still, striving for that understanding. So, but they're always, always throughout history, there were these, so-called rare individuals that would say, no, I've enough of this understanding the outer world. Let's see who we are first, right? Let's see if this kind of mentality, the structure of thought, and even the subtle kind of identification, of the subtle movements of breath and awareness that is, getting, concreted, this kind of sense of attachment to this particular bag of bones and flesh. Let's see what that is. Let's see if that's real first. Again, throughout history, even though there was this kind of small group of people, there was no means of really, sharing that kind of insight. They tried their best. Look at the Buddha, right? Buddha comes along and says, you know what? All this religion, all these, even the Upanishads, just throw them out. Nirvana is just the state of nothing, even this kind of self, this concept of self, the ultimate concept that we could create. You know what? That's nothing. That's not even real. Throw it out. Then see what's left. And what the Buddha was doing there, he wasn't saying that necessarily that this self or God doesn't exist. Existential energy, whatever you want to call it. Wasn't necessarily saying that. He was just saying, look, even this concept of self has become another tool, right, of ignorance. So what can we do? Well, what's left? Emptiness. This concept, everything's empty. There's no consciousness. There's no mind. There's no self. There's no enlightenment. Even. But the mind, and that worked. It worked for thousands of people in Buddha's lifetime even. I mean, imagine the shock, you have this idea of self and he just comes to you and says, no, it's not there. Get rid of it. So it worked to get people out of this kind of conditioning. But again, a small group of disciples that were able to connect, because it's not just a one-time statement, it's a process. And it wasn't just on the intellectual plane, it was also realizing, because for this kind of ultimate release, this ultimate liberation from all this conditioning, it's realizing that the body itself has become a part of this ignorance, right? It's not just this I am this and I'm doing that and I'm doing that. No, it's just the feeling sensation of the body itself, has to be released in order for this full experience of enlightenment. So of course it was harnessing the body as a medium and creating these postures and these techniques and these yogas and sounds and mantras, and all these were mediums, right? To in some sense align or focus consciousness in a very kind of, you could say, concentrated way to eventually, you know, blast through, right? All this kind of amassed ignorance. There was, you know, in some sense being, you know, conditioned on the human consciousness from a young age. And again, so not much has changed over, you know, 2,000 years, but the mind is, you know, we're just becoming more and more, you could say, cunning, or, but it's just, it's unavoidable, because, you know, we have this philosophy. Okay, now emptiness itself, it's like the Buddha said, when that emptiness technique, when that doesn't work, then you're lost. Because if you just hold on to emptiness, then there's no hope. You said the emptiness of emptiness of emptiness of emptiness. So, you know, the mind was just continually evolving, and obviously with the whole this Western experiment, just dissecting reality, the whole concept of this material nature attached to an individual, you know, self or ego, just became this gigantic thing, right? This solid, almost undeniable reality within this cosmic plane of awareness, and repeated through billions of souls, which is only, you could say, a soul, but it's only a continuation. It's only through all this kind of medium of ignorance, right? It's only, you know, you go through it once and you create this kind of you know, trajectory, and then the body's gone, but that subtle aspect, again, the subtle mediumship of consciousness that expresses, you know, through emotions and thought and kind of memory, the subtle aspects get just funneled on, next body, and billions of all these beings that are feeling this sense of identification. So what happened is that, you know, again, in the Buddha, you know, he could only say so much or spread his message to a certain degree, you know, through word of mouth, through expression, and then through his disciples, and, you know, handwritten copies of his words. You know, sharing the ultimate experience, leading people towards enlightenment. And then, you know, we were stuck with this kind of handwritten copying for thousands of years, and then of course we have this idea of printing press, right? Wow, we can take words and we can just take all these letters and put them in order and just stamp the ink and just make thousands of copies of one book. Make it available, so not just, you know, 5% of the human population can read, right? But this idea of reading becomes widespread, right? Through this medium, this printing, right? Printing all these words. And yeah, so that goes on and evolves. It becomes more and more affordable, more and more available for the masses, right? So they can educate and have all these thoughts and ideas, which is, in some sense, is only spreading this kind of delusion, because, you know, how much of that knowledge that they were receiving was actually liberating them, right, from the sense of ignorance, the sense of limitation. So in some sense, all of that was just amassing this kind of intellectual form of ignorance, although, you know, it's painted in these terms of, you know, reason, logic, understanding, education. which is not necessarily a negative form of knowledge. Of course, it led to dramatic so-called improvements in the way we interact with nature, right? Our ability to maintain food supplies and, build structures and, cure diseases, all these kinds of things. So that was it was a positive movement in some sense. Again, it goes beyond. It's evolution. Evolution's beyond, a labeling is good or bad, positive or negative. It's just happening. And then we have this kind of acceleration, right? Within the past 100 years, right? Where all of a sudden the sense of medium, the sense of expressing consciousness through a variety of mediums is just exploding. We have this radio and we can send out radio signals, to thousands of places and create these incredible experiences, right? And, have a show talking about UFOs, right? And all of a sudden everybody thinks there's a invasion going on just because it was a well-produced radio show. And you have music being broadcast, to thousands of homes and thousands of people sitting and listening and experiencing the same sounds, the same music, in thousands of places simultaneously. It'll never have been done like that. It's in the form of consciousness, right? Because again, you could have thousands of people looking up and seeing the stars all at the same time. But this is a human-created expression, this music, right? This pure expression of consciousness just being filtered through radio signals in the air. Then we have this development of the camera, right? Which kind of goes alongside with we can't ignore the realm of art as well, the kind of evolution there from painting these kind of, flat figures, right, on cave walls to having this sense of perspective, which again was an incredibly diluting factor in the sense of creating a sense of self, because now all of a sudden you can see, right? This illusion forms, this painting becomes a reality almost, and you're looking through it as if it's your own eyes, your own experience. It's no longer an object that's just kind of existing in this field, but it's just you and the painting. And the painting itself implies that there's an individual consciousness there looking, just through the sense of using perspective. And of course the arts, in the Western sense of the word, we're just, trying to perfect as much as possible this kind of individual perspective, this sense of realism. And then this camera comes out and is we're done, we're finished. The camera was just perfectly, to a certain degree, creating this kind of representative reality from an individual point, right? From just one little point. On a camera lens, we have this whole vast, world that we can capture. And again, attach it to a self. The camera operator and the person seeing the image. And of course, it wasn't a big leap to code of film and just having a series of images. Just incredible illusion, right? All these little fragments of time and space just put back to back fast enough to create this sense of movement, right? All based on an individual perspective, seen through the camera. And there was you know, at the time when these when film and photography were coming out, we're like, wow, this can be used in some sense as a spiritual, you know, experience to really, you know, awaken people to a certain degree beyond this kind of limited concepts of you know, rational logic, right? And so you have all kinds of experimentation, but as the medium evolved, you know, it became for the most part this commercial tool, right? This commercialized thing, and then we have these, you know, giant world wars and say, look, hey, we can take a photo or take a painting, add some words, and make propaganda. Powerful propaganda. One image can just inspire millions of people. One image. So we can print it out. We can make thousands of copies. You know, war is good. Right? Support the military. And have some nice imagery and some nice text. So yeah, well, you know, then after these huge wars are over, well, wait a minute. And these companies that are left over, you know, there's a way, hey, if we can inspire people to go to war with just one image and some words, wait a minute, we can inspire people to buy some Crisco or some food or some cigarettes, right? And so this media, advertising just became a science, it's this medium, right? Of using words and images in you know, unimaginably creative ways. And ways that had a profound effect on this kind of collective consciousness. And a profound effect on creating a sense of mass ignorance at the same time. You know, smoking's healthy, you know, recommended by your doctor. And we're still, again, we're still facing that. You know, Lipitor, it's a great drug. Oh, there's all these side effects. We'll put that in the small print. You can't read that. You know, you could even die, but no, the benefits outweigh them. Sure. It's a great medicine. And so this kind of media, you know, and we're kind of getting closer to where we are today, if you can tell, you know, where this media in the hands of these gigantic corporations, they live on the media. If they didn't have this mass network of television and radio and internet, what would they be? And even the government and all these kind of events, you know, we'll just, oh, this is important. We'll, you know, it's shown on TV, millions of people gather around and creates a sense of reality. And it's based on a delusion, right? This illusory kind of flickering of images from a robotic, mechanical camera. And not even that today, just Photoshop, right? Or some, you know, animation, right? You don't even need a camera. You can just create your own world virtually now. So we've kind of taken this, you know, from this beginning kind of language and representation. You know, it's no longer just something, you know, we go into a cave and wow, we have this reverence and see this image, or, you know, we go in some kind of sacred temple that has this artwork that we, you know, connect with. No, the images just become everywhere. Right? In so-called modern society. It's not around here. Not where I am right now, but it's a media society. If you need an example of this in the negative sense, you know, look at the tragedy of this 9/11, right? You know, whether it was a controlled kind of experiment or just accident or whatever it was, the fact is that you know, it had a tremendous negative impact on collective consciousness within minutes, for no reason other than the fact that we chose to just keep on replaying and replaying over and over and over these incredibly horrific images, just because, wow, they're so horrific. It's worthy of being played, right? And all this, you know, billions of people were taking these images in and having this sense of hopelessness. What to do? You know, what can we do? You know, rather than, you know, focusing the efforts on the relatively small amount of people that were actually directly affected by the tragedy. But it was a global event. You know, in a very negative sense, the effect it had on the collective consciousness was extremely detrimental. In creating this sense of illusion, you know? And I'm not saying it wasn't a real event or that, you know, that people weren't impacted, but you know, the fact is, you know, thousands of people are dying right now. All over the place, there's people dying. There's all kinds of tragedies. Unimaginable tragedies happening right now, left and right. Somewhere, you know, some corner of the planet, you know, the unimaginable things, you know, we think of is happening. But we're not focusing our awareness on that. And so basically what's happened is, you know, kind of getting to the present moment now with this media. You know, before we kind of go towards the future potential, you know, in this present moment, that the collective consciousness has become, which is this fluid kind of environment, our technology has become almost as fluid as this collective consciousness. Because it's always been the case, if somebody has a really strong experience, you know, even 10,000 years ago, if they have a really strong experience, that creates an opening within the collective consciousness. So therefore, somebody 1,000 miles away that has no direct connection to that culture or to that individual, you know, opens up that possibility for them having the same experience. And you can see that reflected in all these similar architectures, you know, pyramids just popping up all over the place, you know, without any kind of telecommunications. But what's happening now is this kind of, this non-local connection of consciousness is being directly, you know, affected by or tapped into or expressed in our digital media. That is just a cloud, you know, it's an atmosphere of human experience and knowledge in the form of, you know, text and video and live streaming and virtual worlds, 3D, you know, worlds, people interacting, spending thousands of hours of time. And unfortunately, this kind of unconsciousness that humanity has taken on, from the sense of, you know, distinction and the sense of conflict between, you know, self and other, you know, that's reflected in these gigantic wars and this my country and your country and all these kinds of concepts, is only in a lot of ways being reinforced by this incredibly powerful media, right? And the vested interests of, you know, gigantic drug companies that have very little concern with actual healing. It's their ultimate playing field. You know, you can blast, you know, drug commercials in the drugstore now. You're just walking through the aisle and here they come on the air. By the way, you should get this drug. You know, only if you have these symptoms, of course, but now that you heard it. And, or if there's people, like a powerful spiritual leader, right, that happens to come along and say, look, it's time to wake up. It's time to raise our collective consciousness. And you know, if for some reason that you have vested interest in people being asleep, if that's your survival, well, what do? You just crucify them in the media. There's no need to touch his body. There's no need. That's that's actually less real for most people. You know, so much of the reality is based on what they see on TV or in a video or whatever. You don't need to even worry about crucifying their body. You just destroy their image, or you restrict access to that kind of knowledge. And it's almost like an individual, because this whole mass of media and with all this kind of negativity and destructive elements, and a lot of it is just utterly suicidal, right? We're showing, you know, Armageddon 1,001 times, you know, in 1,001 places. Yeah, let's just have millions of people, you know, thinking about, you know, the end of the world. That's the best thing for the planet, you know. And we'll call that entertainment. So this unconsciousness is almost, because in some sense with this centralization of the internet, right? You know, the internet is becoming a central nervous system for a collective consciousness. And just like the nervous system of the body, which is why I started, you know, with the body is a kind of a medium itself. You know, this abstract, this kind of pure consciousness became solidified in the human nervous system, into this identity and all these experiences. That same process is happening for the whole collective consciousness, right? Through the nervous system of the internet, right? This hyper network of thousands of connections, all these relays and these computers, just incredible processing and information being exchanged, right? Like each computer is a neuron in this vast neural network of information and experience. And so this kind of nervous system of collective consciousness is existing, is is this internet, is this media, basically anything that's digital, right? Because once it's digital, yeah, you can put it online. It doesn't even have to be directly connected. And it can be downloaded. Very easily. So, it's kind of evolved into this almost self-aware structure. And it's almost creating this mass kind of planetary identity, this mass awareness of a planetary self. That we can kind of see the hints at, right? But at the same time, just like, you know, we have a sensitive nervous system, and that, you know, when we're polluted with all kinds of negative ideas, the sense of, you know, realizing a pure state of consciousness is very difficult. It becomes engrossed in kind of delusion. And so that's almost happening on this mass scale, that this you know, technological nervous system of collective consciousness is being polluted. You know, whether it's, you know, vested interest or just purely unconscious behavior, whatever it is. You know, unconscious, you know, Hollywood, all these destructive films, and, you know, basically running off of fear, right? Creating fear in people. And if that doesn't work, you know, create this greed. All to maintain this kind of illusory, deluded kind of culture. It's not really leading people to any kind of, you know, blissful state of enlightenment. So it's a perfect tool to kind of keep people distracted. And if they're not distracted, then hey, you know, paint some image of some kind of lifestyle that forces them to go work and work and work. For an image. They're not even working for, yeah, the car that they want. You know, the Mercedes or the BMW. They're not actually wanting the car. They're wanting the commercial. They showed them this car. And when they get the car, yeah, hey, they have all this idea. They saw the commercial 1,000 times, 1,000 times. And now they're living it. Or so they think. Or with a, you know, even like these vacation ads, right? In a magazine. And that's become life, almost, in this so-called modern society that's just immersed in media. And again, if you try to, you know, radiate a powerful spiritual perspective, you know, internationally, that just can't be, you know, based on authentic tradition. That same media just attacks, right? Attacks that kind of emergence. And that's kind of the case. It's almost like an individual, you know, that's sleeping, right? And you're coming and say, wake up, right? Or you ring a bell, or you splash some water, and there's a resistance. You know, there's a resistance to wake up from that kind of sleep, and is this kind of collective, you know, ignorance, and at the same time, kind of a awareness of a global reality of self. It's kind of waking up. There's a little resistance. But it's natural, you know. It's a part of the mind. So if it's a part of individuals' minds, then it's going to be part of this kind of, you know, emerging, flowering collective consciousness. But now, kind of to look at it from a spiritual perspective, you know, why we're talking about all this, the reason, is the potential, right? Because the same media that has this tremendous, power to affect millions of people's lives, even in a subtle way, even an indirect way, if and when that same media is put in the hands, right, of enlightened beings, beings that have realized this pure universal consciousness, this existential bliss, this ultimate state of fulfillment, this emerging, or transcending this kind of illusory existence of a limited self. When those beings have access to this same media, then the power to raise the collective consciousness very rapidly and in a all kind of pervasive kind of way is awakened. It's just like, again, in these ancient rishis, writing in the Vedas, right? These words that in some sense created this illusion of separateness, they were just rearranging and creating this big concept of self and saying you're that, but still just a word. And I said, no, the self is beyond all words. Oh, okay, but you're using the words. So it's the same thing that this media, this mass infrastructure of media that can no longer be viewed simply as a video or as a word or as an idea. It's beyond all that at this point. We don't have the structure in our language to even begin to assess the meaning or the existence of this vast network of information. But when that awakening, you could call it, the best I can do is this kind of nervous system of collective consciousness. When that, nervous system of collective consciousness begins to be purified, right? Purified with the blissful expressions, the supreme knowledge of enlightened masters from all over, from whatever tradition, whatever belief system. When this kind of pure knowledge gets spread out, right, through this kind of vast network, it has this purifying power. But somehow the people involved in spirituality in these modern times is just have just given up on this media in some sense, or they just say, well, all right, we'll let Hollywood make all the movies, right? Or we'll let these gigantic industries, go on making all these, ridiculous commercials, or these sensational videos. And somehow the people in the spiritual community have just not even tried, right, to tap into the potential that a film experience can create to spiritually inspire. That, having a surround sound system of 32 speakers in a theater, filling it with sacred divine mantras. Or just healing vibrations. No, we'll just let Batman and all these guns and all this violence. We'll just let that take place. But we won't even consider the opportunity to express from a enlightened perspective through this media, right? So now we can finally get to the topic of our talk, which is the future. The future of media. Is media in the hands of enlightened beings? That are not just expressing a belief system, right? Or religion. That may be a part of it, but that are actually expressing, altered states of consciousness. The bliss of samadhi through Photoshop. Or through, live streaming technology. And so, if we want to imagine the potential impact, right? We can just imagine in the kind of a reversal, because the way nature works, everything has a balance. So we take this tremendously tragic event, this media event primarily, of this so-called 9/11, right? Well, just an opposite 9/11 is the future of media. And what do you mean, an opposite 9/11? Means that a global experience of bliss. If people looking up in the sky or wherever they're looking and say, wow, this is an incredible experience. And I'm not in any kind of state of fear or greed, just feel liberated, right? You say, well, no, that's not possible, right? It just, what could it be? What could it be? Some kind of aliens landing, or some kind of second coming, right? Some kind of divine form. It could be that. Or it could just be media that we create. From an enlightened consciousness. And so, that's why the potential of this media, in the hands of enlightened beings that are coming from the highest state of awareness, is literally the mass awakening of collective consciousness. It's purifying, right, of, layers of delusion. On a massive scale. Because that's the only way it can happen. We can't be in some kind of evolved Sat Yuga or New Age, right, while we have this incredibly destructive media. So the future of media is the mass enlightenment of humankind.